Today we're talking about Anything for Jackson. Directed by Justin Dyck, Anything for Jackson is a film about two grieving grandparents attempting to resurrect their grandson through a satanic scheme. Currently at 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, this film has garnered widespread acclaim. It's available for streaming on Super Channel in Canada and on Shudder in other countries. I'm pleased to be joined by writer Keith Cooper.
Hi there.
Hi Keith, thanks for joining me.
Hey, no problem. My pleasure.
So I first heard of your movie. I'm sure you saw Mike Flanagan's tweet about it. So I mean, first off, congratulations on the movie. There's been a lot of acclaim and praise, so that's great to see.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. And the Mike Flanagan stuff kind of came out of left field, so that was really cool. I'm a huge fan, so that's been interesting for sure.
I mean, it's a great movie. It was a pleasant surprise. I hadn't known about it at all until I saw the tweet. But then, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a very well written, fleshed out story, very original take on the whole possession horror concept. So it was a great watch.
Thank you. I'm so glad you liked it.
Yeah. So I guess my first question here is more about your journey as a filmmaker, but I understand the avenue for filmmaking in Canada is very different. So what did the production process look like from pitching the story to casting? What did that process look like?
Yeah, it was honestly, as far as this one goes, the entire pitch was super simple. My partner Justin, the director, Justin Dyck, and we submitted the script to a company called Vortex, and we kind of talked a little bit with their head of, I believe she's head of development, Courtney McAllister, and she'd said she really liked it. Why don't you come talk to Bill Marks, who kind of runs the company? So we said, all right, cool, we'll come in. And it was 5 minutes, Bill said, what do you have? He's like, I heard this is a cool idea. And so we pitched him and he was like, great. Yeah. Can you guys start in 4 weeks? And we're like, sure, that sounds awesome. So it was literally that easy, which was nice. It certainly doesn't always go like that. And then, because we only had 4 weeks to prep, Justin and I just kind of put everything else on hold and started getting to work. Luckily with Justin's background, I'm sure you've looked into it, and he's, we've both done a bunch of these Christmas holiday movies, but Justin's done even more than I have, and he directs them all. So he runs a very tight ship, which is good. It worked in our favor. So he had so much experience that a 15-day shoot wasn't terrifying. And we were able to get it all done. So then as far as casting goes, I actually wrote the movie with Sheila and Julian in mind for the leads. Because we'd known friends of friends who knew them. So we thought, okay, well, we can reach out to them. And if it doesn't go well, then we'll get kind of, the lesser version of those actors. But we got really lucky. They both liked it and wanted to do it. And then from there, we had a great casting director, Rebecca LaMarche, and she found Josh Cruddas for Ian. She found Konstantina for us, for Becker. And just Justin had already worked with Lynette and things like that. So we were in really good shape with our casting. We found Sasha Morik, the DOP, through friends and producers. And preparation was crazy because we filmed, I'd say 90% of the movies filmed in my house. And so it was a big benefit in the sense that we could kind of go around and map out all the shots. Justin built his shot lists, just walking around, and I think I'm standing in for a lot of the actors in all those TV, little phone version of that movie. But I don't recommend watching that one. I'm not very good. So it was great. So on the days we were ready. So it felt really confident going into it, and it just helps when you have that level of talent behind you too. The other people. I'm not talking about us. I'm saying like Sheila, Julian. Everybody came in ready and knew what they wanted to do.
Of course. So, I mean, right after I watched the movie, I looked you and the director up, Justin Dyck, and I was surprised to see the filmography of all those holiday movies. So, it's very my question is, how did you get from that to directing a horror movie?
Well, as you say, Canada's a different animal, right? It's not as easy here. You know, I know, and you know, Justin directs all those. You know, I just do the writing on those ones. It's kind of an interesting thing. It was always horror. It was always horror. It was always, you know, we'd had some other stuff. I love sci-fi as well. You know, I was actually a writer at Funny or Die with Will Ferrell and Adam McKay. So I was writing, you know, adult themed comedy before I wrote any of those holiday movies. It's just one of those things that somebody just came along with an opportunity and said, well, hey, we have, you know, this movie, it's a kid's movie. Do you guys want to take a crack at it? So we're sure, why not? And I mean, you know, the ups and downs is the up was that they liked the movie and it did really well in that market. So they wanted more. And that's usually how it happens, right? You just keep going. And if there's work, you're going to keep taking that work. So it was good. I enjoyed it. I still like it. I think I've probably told 30 Christmas movies. I think I'm done telling Christmas movies. I think I've told them. You know, it's a specific market. They know what they like, and I'm glad that they do.
Great. So you also mentioned that you filmed it in your house. And so my question is, I'm sure your neighbors were aware of all the filming going on. What was the reception like filming a satanic occult film in your neighborhood? I hope your neighbors aren't superstitious.
Yeah, I hope so too. I didn't give them the ins and outs. I did tell them that I brought bottles of wine to all my neighbors just to give a preemptive I'm sorry. Because, you know, you start really early, right? Like most times the trucks were rolling in around 5:30 a.m. So I knew I'd be putting them out. So I went over ahead of time. Luckily, I've got fantastic neighbors. They were all very supportive. You know, for the most part, I would say in my community, it's a little bit older people in the neighborhood. So they found out that Yannick Bisson from Murdoch Mysteries was in the movie. And so, of course, that was the day where you could see them out on their decks and taking pictures of beautiful Yannick.
That's awesome.
But as far as the satanic stuff goes, yeah, I don't know. I didn't mention that. I just said we're going to be filming a movie, and it's a horror movie. And the part with, I don't want to give away too many spoilers, obviously, but there's a scene, and there's blood everywhere outside, and my shed was covered. You know, that was an interesting one. We got some interesting looks, but everybody was cool. They all just, you know, I think they were all very supportive, so it was very nice.
That's great. Is it weird to be watching the film that was filmed in your house?
Definitely. I mean, the kind of crazier thing is, so there are two scenes that were filmed in Justin's house as well. So the scene where Henry and Audrey are in bed, that's actually Justin's bedroom. And he had to rip out his carpet probably 3-4 days right before production because he'd realized the flooring wouldn't match and we needed it to match. So while he's directing during the day, he's running home and ripping up his carpet and putting in flooring at night. And Ian's basement is at Justin's house. And then Jackson's house, we actually built a set in an old movie theater that Justin and I used to watch movies in. It was shutting down. And so we were like, oh, well, this is perfect. We can film kind of one thing here and give our old theater a last hurrah. So watching characters move around in the movie, and then, you know, like, so for instance, they walk upstairs to what is technically my daughter's room, but then it goes into Jackson's bedroom, and it feels very strange to me. It's jarring for sure. But as far as the ghosts go, it doesn't freak me out or anything. My youngest daughter won't watch the movie because she's too scared.
Well, hopefully she'll get around to it eventually.
We'll see. I don't know. She gets scared pretty easy, that one.
Yeah, so with anything for Jackson, it was, I mean, I was surprised to see, I know you mentioned that you had Audrey and Henry's characters in mind. So it's weird I know most movies you don't see older characters, let alone geriatric antagonists, and I use air quotes because they're not really antagonists
Sure.
here, but why did you decide to go the route of casting older actors?
It was one of those things. Every time, uh, as a horror fan, I just kind of I wanted to see I wanted to write something that I would want to see. And it started out actually as a younger couple who just lost their son in a car accident, and it just wasn't as interesting. And I thought, well, wait a minute, what if they're grandparents? And then there's just, it's Justin and I go back and forth a lot on a lot of like what ifs, what if this, what if that, and it really, I think it gives you a better movie, because sometimes you get so caught up in an idea and you think it's great, but it's, sometimes that's your first idea, and it's better to explore other options. I mean, that idea might be the one you go with, but you should always at least entertain the idea of other things. So that's what happened with that. We just, I started writing some grandparents. I think I'd mentioned to Justin, I was like, hey, what if they were grandparents? And he was like, oh, that's cool. We could do this and that. And it just lended itself really well. So yeah, that was sort of how that came about. Just questioning everything that I do. That's what Justin does best.
Great. So one thing I like about the horror genre is its ability to sort of morph thematically. I especially like when it converges with some sort of drama, or like when you're forced to empathize with the characters, which was definitely the case in this movie. In Anything for Jackson, there were those themes of loss and grief, with the characters ironically finding faith in malevolent forces. So I found that to be very compelling. Are you planning on revisiting these themes ever?
Yeah, I never say never, for sure. I think loss and grief is certainly, I think I've probably written, I wouldn't even know how many different things. I'm very intrigued and interested in things of, the idea of afterlife. And so I definitely touch upon it a lot. So yeah, I would say there's probably a huge chance that I'll end up writing something else in that space. Actually, yeah, I already know that there's stuff in the works. So yes.
Great. Um, so I guess I wanted to move along more towards just generally speaking. I know that when I first saw the synopsis for the film, first thing that came to my mind was Rosemary's Baby. And stylistically, I think I don't know if it's just me, but I saw a little bit of Ari Aster's Hereditary. Were there any directors or writers or movies that you tried to emulate or get inspiration from when you were writing this?
We're obviously influenced heavily, right? Funny, I hear Rosemary's Baby a lot, and I've never seen the movie. I won't support Roman Polanski, so that's just my own personal view. And so it's interesting though. But for sure, Ari Aster. I mean, Hereditary is incredible. Midsommar is amazing. Like, so yeah, I know that I think he deals with, Ari Aster deals with grief as well. So I think we get compared that way, which is fine. I mean, that's great company to be in. So I'm happy about that. But for me, I think I like any movie that I just like good movies. It doesn't have to be horror, doesn't have to be action. I don't have a genre that I love. Just, it has to be. I like well-written characters. So I think I gravitate toward movies that if you take the horror away, there's still a really good movie there. One of my favorite go-tos is Carrie, the original Carrie. The relationship between Carrie and her mother is incredible. I'm trying to think of other movies. Pan's Labyrinth, same sort of thing. These huge fantastical elements and stuff, but at the core, have you seen The Orphanage?
I have
Not The Orphanage, but L'Orphanage, I think I believe it's, I don't want to say, I'm going to go with Spanish or French. Clearly I speak very, very many languages. So I subtitled that one, but it is a phenomenal movie. Orphanage is just this great story about loss and grief as well. So I think things like that, you're always influenced by people that were better than you that started it out. So it's, you just try to make your contribution and hope that somebody else takes something away from it.
So I also wanted to touch upon, there's this idea of, I'm sure you've heard about, the new golden age of horror with Ari Aster and Robert Eggers and all those big directors.
Right, right.
And then there's this dichotomy between highbrow entertainment with like those atmospheric horrors and then jump scare horrors. And
Right.
there's a lot of, I don't think there's any other genre which has so much polarization.
Yeah.
So my question is, what are your thoughts on this? Like, do you embrace it? Do you find it limiting?
No, again, I would say, I think you set out to make, as long as you make the movie that you set out to make, I don't mind, I've been a lifelong horror fan my whole life. And, I like movies that have jump scares, and I like movies that are cerebral. I love, Silence of the Lambs, and I also love Lake Placid. Like, I think there's room for both those movies. And you're right, there is a real breakdown, in subgenre and horror. But I also think that's just because horror fans are so passionate. Which is what I love about horror fans. So we do hear a lot when we're pitching, like, low budget, high concept. And we're like, okay. And they're like, what is it? What is it that you want at high concept? And like, I don't know, but I'll know it when I see it. And you're like, okay. So it definitely makes it more difficult to pitch. Again, I think Justin and I just made a movie that we just would both want to watch. And then we're like, maybe other people want to watch this too. So that was always our goal.
Right. And I guess my last question here, I guess you touched upon this a bit, but I mean, what's next for you? Are you planning on staying in the horror realm?
For sure. I think so. I mean, I love horror. It probably is my absolute favorite. I would say that and sci-fi are my two favorites. But I love all movies. I really do. So luckily, because Jackson has been doing so well, we've had a lot of doors opened up to us. So it's just really cool to be able to meet other filmmakers and other people at, I guess further away than Canada, making movies in Hollywood that are interested in talking to us. So things have been going really well. We're definitely staying in horror. We've got a couple of things on the table right now, so we're going to keep moving in that area.